Hey guys, it's M, and today we're going to be talking about what I really like in HNK. I know, a role reversal. 3 points before we start. First, as always, these videos won't have the same structure as my normal videos and will be more freeform. Second, we have a Kofi! I know it's kind of random, especially for a channel my size, but due to circumstances outside of my control, it seemed like a good idea to make one of these. Not gonna ask you guys to donate or anything, but if you want to help out, the link's down below. It would probably help me stop missing dates too. Along with that, I made 2 other channels to talk about extended content. Originally, this channel was just a gaming content channel, and then we somehow switched over to HNK content. I still want to talk about some games, but since it doesn't fit what we've built here, I thought it was fair to make an HNK channel, which is this one, and then a different one where I talk about all the other stuff. Both of them will be in the description down below, for if anyone's interested in hearing me talk about extended media. With all that out of the way, I'm gonna hand the mic over to current me. Hello, now it's on to me, M, actual M, present M. It's funny, I didn't even want to make this video, but I feel like after 2 I don't like things about HNK videos, people were like, what the fuck, do you like the show? Why do you watch the show if you apparently hate everything? And I can't just say, what do you like? Everything else? I don't think that was an option, so here we are. But before that, what I do find funny is a lot of the things I said that were problems were also things that I liked about it, and you're probably gonna hear it when I go into this and all these points, but let's get started. The manga art style. I don't think this is surprising to anyone. Tetsuo's art was just it's amazing. It's really good. It's very good. I don't even know how to elaborate on this point. If you haven't seen any of the manga panels, you need to. They're really good, and the anime, people usually come at the anime because they're like, wow, well, it doesn't have Tetsuo's art style, and you know, it's trash. And it's like, we would need modern day technology to get close to the amount of detail that man puts in his drawings. Y'all seen the shading? Like, don't it's amazing. The building designs, this doesn't get any love ever. The designs in HNK in general are really good, and you get to the building designs, which is a part of the story that really doesn't matter. You usually get one establishing shot and that's it, but those establishing shots they're really good. Look at Cassandra, the last Nanto General's tower. All those shots, there's so much like little detail that I feel like most people wouldn't put in. Honestly, if there was an anime nowadays, it probably would have been like a little tower in the background that's just like a line. It's just like a cylinder with no individual details on it. The amount of non-canon entries to attempt to fill things in. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen another media where there's so many like guidance and side stories and all these official things. I understand it's like, well, the book is like 30 years old. I don't know, even other old shows, I haven't seen that many attempts to like fill out characters. I think HNK has so many like interesting characters that you can make a side story off of any of them. So then people did that, and I do like that. There's so much extra wild you can dive into if you want to. If you finish HNK 1 and 2 and you're like, man, I want more. While the quality may vary, there is more content out there if you're looking for it. I like Kenshiro. Well, I know some people go like, Kenshiro's kind of, you know, the boring base protagonist. I don't think he is, because I like Kenshiro's progression, because he went from a loser, early Ken, like pre-Shin and all those flashbacks and stuff, he sucked. He was trash. He didn't win any fights, and then he grows into like manly tears, cool, I'm beating up everybody, Ken. Like, he felt like he had natural character progression, because he went from I care about everything to like, you know, I'm doing what I have to do, when he thought Yuria died, and then Yuria comes back and he's like, let's finish this. You know, and also the natural progression across the world. I'm trying to make this make sense. I hope it does make sense for y'all. At the start of the show, Ken shows up, he just saves the people, and they're like, oh yeah. When you get to the end of the show, they're like, oh, you're Ken. Oh, you're the savior. Like, they start to know his name, and I'm like, I feel like there aren't too many animes that do that. Like, you know, you're told these people save the world like 100 times, but then they go anywhere, and they're just walking around like nobody knows who they are. I understand it's like the end of the world, so there weren't too many moments where they're like, Ken, oh, my favorite character, oh my god. Like, there weren't too many of those, but it's nice to know that it happened, you know? It's just nice to see a character get recognition. I like Rao. This is basically the same thing I said said for Ken. Rao went from, he was the most progressive threat I've ever felt in the anime. Because most animes, you watch them and you're like, yeah, this is the villain. But with Rao, he went from kind of a joke. First fight, I thought he was a bitch. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I mentioned that before. First fight, Rao didn't feel, he was a villain. He was there. He cheated like 3 times and then he left. And I'm like, okay. And then you get to like the end of the show and he's like conquered half of everything. The only thing he needed was like the last Nanto General's tower. And it's like, you felt the weight of him being the villain, if that makes sense. There are not a lot of shows that do that. A lot of times it's like, oh, here's the villain, we're fighting. You know, like they they beat up the heroes, they beat up some side characters, and that's it. And maybe you're told they're destroying things. You might even see it like a clip or 2 of it, but that's it. With Rao, there were people like afraid of him because they started to know who he was. You see a ton of the towns, at least in the anime, you see a ton of the towns that he conquered because Ken has to go and save them. And you see those so many times, you're like, damn, he really been putting in the work, hasn't he? I don't think any other character's been like that. And also, he felt like he grew as a villain, mainly towards the end of the arc. Because really all he wanted to do was conquer everything. But it's like, it felt believable, you know? Because he was like, I lost my title, I don't even care. That's it, I'm conquering stuff. And then you get to the Rao and Toki arc, which was like, I think it was one of the best arcs. Name any other anime where there's an arc where the villain like cries and you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like, none. None. I was sitting there like, oh bruh. No, like, I can't think of any other shows that had a moment like that where the main villain fights a side character and he's like, fuck, I didn't want to do this. And then he spared him, which again, a lot of other anime villains wouldn't have done that. And then he's like, live your life. He had really good character-driven scenes that you wouldn't see in a lot of other animes or stories in general, I suppose. And I really liked him for that. Kentro's powers never truly felt like ass pulls. I know a lot of people would say like, yeah, Ken's powers are fucking busted. They come out of nowhere. It's like, we never saw everything Ken could do. So whenever he does something, it's like, it fits into the realm of believing he could do that. When you watch a lot of animes where they have an ass pull, where it's like, here's my random power that's come out of nowhere. It really does feel like you couldn't do that. With Ken, it's like, the situation never called for him to do that before, you know? The most ass pull moment, probably Musou Tensei. But they didn't do the thing most animes do, where the character gets an ass pull and then they just shit on the villain. There are countless animes that have that happen. The character will get the power up and then the villain's just dead and you see him get like yoinked around for like 8 chapters. When Ken gets Musou Tensei, they then gave it to Rao. So then it wasn't a wash. It was an equal fight, even though Rao said he could beat him. It was a relatively equal fight. Not a lot of animes do that. It's like, it was cool. I should really correct this point too. The side characters in Fist of the North Star are really good. That's what I'm going to say. I wrote down Juz and Ray are the best characters. I'm not getting flamed on Discord twice. Nice try, assholes. But yeah, this goes back to the whole everyone has a Gaiden thing. Fist of the North Star characters, a lot of the problems people have with the show is that a lot of characters die in like 2 seconds. If you ask a lot of people, they'll say one of the biggest problems with the show is they kill off people really fast. And you know why we care that they kill off people really fast? Because they're interesting characters. There are a lot of shows where they'll kill off like 80 bajillion side characters and you're like, okay, I don't care. Like, they didn't contribute anything. They didn't have anything cool going for them. In Fist of the North Star, I feel like literally every character could have their own story about them, which most of them do. Huey and Sherman have stories, and they were in the show for like, I think 3 or 4 episodes. I feel like that shows how good a lot of these characters are. You get a good feel for who they are and what they do, like the second they hit the screen. It feels like a lot of those characters are the main characters of their own stories, if that makes sense. I like the villains. I know it sounds like otherwise when I said in the last video Juza was stupid and all that, but I do like them. All of them felt different from each other, you know? Again, with the whole character individuality thing, all of them felt like distinctly different villain-wise. It's not like something like, Dragon Ball where you hit like Super and you're like, wow, this villain is like this villain, this villain's like this villain. Like, you can't really draw those comparisons in HNK, other than their powers might be similar. You could go like, oh, they all use Nanto. Like, that's the closest thing you could probably say. All the villains felt really unique. Like, Amoeba was just a weirdo. Rao, Jaggy, all of them. This is why they all have their own fans, even though not all of them were alive for that long. They were all just really unique. They had their own distinct scenes. I feel like they all had really good key moments that would stick out in your mind for the fight, if not multiple, you know? Really creative powers. I don't know how else to explain this point. Everyone in HNK has such weird powers, even though they all kind of go off the basis of I punch you really hard or I slash you, and then you get to like Huey where it's like the air, and then you get to HNK 2, they're bending reality. For shirt and Soten no Ken that Ken Kazumi is like fucking busted and Bald Wu has a stand. Like, it gets really crazy, and it's really nice to see that the abilities didn't get stale after a certain amount of time. To compare it to Dragon Ball, there are a lot of moves where it's like, this looks like this. It's like when you play Xenoverse or something, and half of the cast has full power energy wave, and you're like, wow, they couldn't think of anything original. It's like, it's not that. A lot of the characters didn't do that much. With HNK, I feel like you see the best abilities everyone has. Like, if you look up on any wiki what the character's abilities are, you're probably gonna see more than like 10, like usually. And then the technique will have like a essay under it on what it does, you know? Stuff like that. Most of the character designs. Bro, you could look at the minions for half of the characters in HNK, and they look amazing. Shuren, oh my god, Shuren's guards? It was one of my favorite designs from the whole show, and that's kind of the reason I'm mad Shuren died really fast. His goon showed up, and I'm like, this design is godlike. Huey's army was designed well too. The only group of people who I think had bad designs were probably like Udo's army, and I don't even think they're canon. I think they were only in Garuda Gaiden, because they look like strippers. But yeah, it's like villains had good designs, the good guys had good designs. Hats off to them. They did that really well. Not annoying comedic relief. Yeah, I think everyone wanted to dislike him at the start, because most characters like that. Like, they'll just say stuff that's unnecessary. That was one of the excuses for a good comedic relief. Like, he was funny, and he didn't say anything when it was unnecessary, you know? It wasn't like when Toki died, he was just like, should have blocked. Like, you know, he didn't say anything out of pocket. They knew when the scene was serious and he didn't have to say anything, and they knew when they could get away with jokes. Dudes crying normally. This is a weird point. When you watch a lot of shows, when a lot of characters cry, you're just like, okay. You're just kind of sitting there looking at it like, it's a very flimsy reason, but I do get it. I think the thing that made HNK crying work is they didn't cry over like everything. You know, sometimes characters would die and they just kind of go like, that's my boy. Like when Ray died, I don't think Ken cried. I think he was sad about it, but he wasn't crying. I think this is where the whole mainly tears thing came from. It would have to be a really sad moment or a really powerful moment. With Rao and Toki, Rao cried, and I'm like, that was a powerful scene. When Ken's fighting Rao and he cries, even if I don't like the scene, I understand why the character would be doing that. It's like every moment where it happened, it felt like it would make sense from a normal human perspective and not just like cartoon character land, you know? They knew what moments a character should and shouldn't be emotional, if that makes sense. The ending half is really good. I've said this in the last video, I think. I said the first half of HNK 1 was worse than the second half. When I say worse, I don't mean it sucked. I mean like the second half of HNK felt like it was written better. Because you didn't have to introduce factors anymore. It was just like, okay, now here's the story, you know? Because that's when Raul became the main villain, Ken doing what he does best, the Nanto chariots got involved. Like all this stuff that was just like definite. In the first half of HNK 1, it was more like, let me wander around and deal with, you know, go from villain to villain. Second half of HNK, you know what's going down, you know exactly what's about to happen, let's just see it play out. And that was really good. And we only had one real villain the whole time. The second half of the entire show. Which is why I'm saying Rao got to be like the best villain. Because it wasn't like most other animes or shows where they had to go make like 20 characters and then he'd have to fight them and then da-da-da-da. Like there were characters in between, you know, the second half start where Souther died to the final fight, you know, like Ryuga and stuff existed, but they weren't meant to be that deep. Rao was the main focus of the entire end half, and his character got to be shown in a lot of good ways because of it, you know. A lot of characters did really well because of that choice of just focusing on like one main villain and one main hero and their growth till that final fight, and I think that's really cool. I don't know if a lot of shows can get away with that nowadays, because I can't think of a single example where it's just been like, here's the villain, except I guess Goku and Jiren, but they didn't use that time to develop their characters. They used that time to just keep scaling them up, you know. Honestly, that's the end of my points. Oh, actually, there's one more point. Yuria. I like Yuria. And it's funny because I mentioned in the first complaints video, I was like, I don't really like Yuria. Yuria's kind of boring. I think she was interesting. Because at first I felt like Yuria just left and she wasn't doing anything. And then you get to the end of HNK1 where she explains like, yeah, I had to do this. Oh, also I'm dying. Oh, also here's my ability. It made me like her character, and I didn't expect to actually like her at all, because, you know, she was missing for like 80% of it. Like, I kind of respected her character, if that makes sense. She didn't get as developed as literally everyone else, but, you know, that's what I'm saying. HNK makes strong characters. You might not like someone, and then all of a sudden you end up liking them near the end. But yeah, I feel like there are going to be thoughts on this video. I would love to discuss with any of you. I feel like we're going to have a lot more positive responses and not, you know, like last time. Do you even like the show? So with that, Vinna, and I am out.